Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blogging Theology. And today, I'm delighted to welcome back Dr. Abdullah Ali. You're most welcome, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Yeah, how are you, Paul?
Alhamdulillah, very well. Good to see you again. For those who don't know, Dr. Ali is a professor of Islamic law and the prophetic tradition at Zaytuna College in California. And this is a momentous, perhaps historic moment we're living through. And I'm referring, of course, to the upcoming elections in the United States, which I think are due to take place next Tuesday of next week. And even though I'm not American, nevertheless, these elections do concern us all, because America is the sole remaining superpower in the world, and what it thinks and does affects us all one way or another, for good or ill. And I was struck, Dr. Ali, you posted something on Facebook a day or so, or was it just yesterday, actually? I was going to read a couple of sentences from it, if I may, which really struck me, actually. You wrote, "With a week remaining before the US elections, it seems that many Muslims are still confused about their choices. I believe people should vote their conscience or not vote at all. But let us not delude ourselves," you write. "The Green Party is not the good option. When you vote Green, you're still voting for a debatably less harmful or less evil option than the other two parties, not for an objective good. The only reason the Green Party appears to be the good option is that so many are only focused on the matter of Palestine," understandably perhaps. "But as some have already underscored, a Green Party vote has no immediate effect on the situation, because we all know the party is not going to win or even come close to winning." And then you go on to talk about what the Green Party actually stands for in terms of its policies on imposing LGBT agenda and so on everyone in schools. But I mean, it strikes me that as an outsider looking in, you're facing, you, the United States, facing a terrible dilemma, because there's the most unspeakable crime being committed now in the occupied Palestine. The Israeli government has just decreed or issued a law saying that they're banning the United Nations Relief Agency from operating in Gaza and the West Bank, thus virtually guaranteeing starvation, really. And it's just unspeakable what's happening. And even America has spoken against it, which is surprising. But the reason I mention that is, so that means voting Democrat is problematic, to put it mildly. The Republicans, are they any better? That's a good question. And the Green Party have one good policy, perhaps, but then have a host of other parties and other policies which are highly problematic. I mean, what do you do if you're a Muslim in America and you want to vote? And that assumes, by the way, that voting is actually halal, and that's another subject entirely. But assuming it is for the second, what do you do? I mean, or do you just abstain, or just turn your back on the whole process and say, I have no confidence in the system, I'm not going to participate in the system? But then, is that even an option, really, for a responsible citizen in America? So these are all things that occurred to me when I read your piece. I'll put a link to it in the description below. But what are your thoughts?
Bismillah. I guess the first place to begin would be the sort of the genesis of this particular post. And I had noticed that a number of Muslims have been demonizing a moral principle. And that particular principle is the one of adopting the lesser of two evils. And Muslims, a number of them are even claiming, and some of them associated with the learned community, or sort of scholarly, clerical sort of class, even saying things like as if there's no such thing, right? And I was taken aback by that, because fundamentally I find it to be another situation where Muslims have, committed to moral compromise, but one that actually even undermines our morality by actually arguing that no such thing exists within Islam when this is well established. That when you only have two bad options and you choose the least detrimental of them, right? In the same way that if you have two good options and one of them's better than the other, then you choose the better option, right? That's what we're encouraged to do. And fundamentally, like I've only voted twice in my entire life, right? So I grew up in an environment like similar to what you alluded to, with this understanding that voting was a problem, right?
Yeah.
Islamically, right, and that Muslims shouldn't be involved with the political process. Voting was haram, that you should not even acknowledge the, I guess you'd say, the sovereignty of a nation which doesn't embrace God and God's law.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, I've evolved in my understanding of a lot of these things, but this was the sort of, again, the paradigm that I grew up with. And then after, or rather close to 9/11, the 2000 elections, there was a shift in the mosque going community in America in particular, where Muslims, a number of them, like, still a minority of Muslims, who had decided, okay, well, it's time to participate in the political process. So they were in, most of these, people, the Muslims, they voted for George Bush. And they felt, okay,
they
well,
voted for George Bush.
Yes,
Okay.
right,
Okay.
right. They voted for George Bush, and the argument that was pretty, what was popular was that, okay, well, George Bush was probably going to be harder on the Zionist regime because his father was right before him. So his father was harsher or harder on them, and he didn't win re-election, right? But the assumption was that, okay, well, he'd be like his father most likely. Wow. Of course, that wasn't the only reason, but that was definitely a very popular argument that I had heard, right, and on why. But still, back then, I said, I'm not going to vote, right? That you guys have been telling us that the voting is haram all these years, So then 9/11 happened. Then after 9/11, there was this great shift in our community. Everybody's embracing their, Americanness and wrapping themselves in American flags and celebrating, that I'm an American Muslim, and then emphasizing the American part more than the Muslim part, right? It's in this one thing after the other, right? So, again, it's not to say that, that voting itself, doesn't have some particular benefits, right? But I think, but for me, the fundamental point for me is that I've never accepted the idea that democracy, quote unquote, actually is real in the sense that people think that it is, right? Yes. And it was interesting that after Barack Obama had won, and actually I voted for Obama this very first time in my life. I voted for Barack Obama during his first term. I didn't vote for him during the second term, but I voted for the first term, and largely it's out of, just the, it was the spirit of the time. Everybody was like really feeling good, and they're like just really
optimistic. First president,
yeah,
things are going to change.
Right, change. Yeah, right, change you can believe in, right? And I had said, I told someone maybe 2 years prior to his victory, there's never going to be a black president. Now, the reason I said that was because when I went to school and studied civics, we learned like the formal qualifications of a president and the informal qualifications of the president. And the book that we utilized actually listed as one of the informal qualifications that you had to be white.
Well, so, maybe that was true until that point. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it had been implanted into my brain. And so okay, well, it's never going to happen. Right. But then all of a sudden, when I started to follow his campaign, and I was like, man, this guy looked like he potentially can really win. Right. So, and then he did win. And so, but also the entire planet seemed to have shifted, and the Muslim world really changed, its attitude about the West completely. And that's why we saw the Arab Spring happen. And so Obama sort of injected this new sort of like spirit and idealism into the Muslim world, and all the Arabs started to believe that, oh, now it's time to overthrow our dictators and our autocrats.
Obama's middle name is Hussein as well.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That must there's something. Maybe he's a secret Muslim, which of course people on the right were saying anyway. He's not. Exactly. That was he's definitely not. But yeah,
right. And so he was being maligned as a secret Muslim as well, right? And so that also gave us more reason to embrace him, because even Trump, was like, oh, he said things and people were like, well, Obama may not really be a Christian. He claims to be a Christian, but he has that name, and he's lived in Indonesia and things like that. So, but at any rate, Obama's presidency convinced the Muslim world that there was real change happening. And so saw the uprisings happen in these different countries, and in Egypt and in Tunisia and Bahrain, and you saw it in Syria in attempt. I mean, so we have all these things happen, so because of this, and I always felt that, okay, it was a big trick. I said, listen, democracy is not real, right? Listen, it's like, again, I'm not saying that your vote doesn't count in certain instances, but again, I voted for Obama not because I believe that democracy was real or that anything major is going to happen or change with American foreign policy, right? But it was like, okay, it was the spirit of the time, and I felt like, okay, this has had a good psychological effect on the population, right? So, and and it was like a time when people started, maybe America's now post-racial, right? So people were talking about it in that sense at the time. So again, of course, long story short, I mean, of course, what do you do, right? And in the situation like we are finding ourselves in right now, when you have your options are a regime that is in power at the moment and claims that once they win, even though they already have won and they already have the control, that they're going to change things. They're actually going to bring peace in the Middle East. And then you have another candidate who's promising Muslims even now, even though after maligning Muslims during his first term, at least on the lead up to his election, maligning Muslims, saying to Muslims now, hey, vote for me, I'll bring peace in the Middle East. And actually being a bit more emphatic about it than even the Kamala Harris campaign, right? Because I haven't seen anything similar to what Trump has said, from the Kamala Harris campaign. Trump has spoken not only about the Middle East, he's talking about stopping all wars, right? So he's very strong message that he's been sending. Right? So.
Yeah. The thing is, you sent me a link. There's an extraordinary video with Donald Trump sitting on a table next to, I think it's a Michigan Muslim leader, actually a very articulate guy. He also gave a speech. And, so this Muslim leader, I don't know his name, but, he's outlining agreed upon points in meeting with President Trump: end wars in the Middle East and Ukraine, especially Gaza, preserve family values, increase Muslim representation in administration, take strong stance against Islamophobia, support policies for national prosperity. And, Donald Trump's listening and nodding his head whilst this Muslim speaker is going through these 5 points. And at the end, Donald Trump says, yep, that's all common sense to me. I have no objection to any of these points at all. I mean, he's looking at him as if to say, what's the big deal? Of course I support all these things. Well, the big deal is, as you have said, sir, that, last time around he was dissing the Muslims and, demonizing the Muslims. And now he's saying, well, I'm against Islamophobia. I support, this, I support that. And I'm thinking, the thing is, I mean, can we believe him? Can we believe Donald Trump? Now, obviously, he's a politician and there's an election in 7 days. So my instinct is to say, of course not. Who would trust a politician's promises 7 days before an election? I mean, come on. But what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's an important question to ask. And I'm glad that you've given me the opportunity to even have this particular conversation and have this discussion. I imagine that you're going to be maligned by a lot of people, too.
I go to Speaker's Corner every week. Believe me, I have thick skin. It's had to be a lot worse than being maligned on YouTube.
Right. Okay.
Really.
Good.
I don't mind it. I'm asking a question. I'm just asking a question. I'm not saying. I'm certainly not saying vote Trump. Nor am I saying vote for anyone. Actually, I'm not an American. So.
Well, I'm saying that I'm saying that you're probably maligned because of what my answer is going to be to you, right? So,
I see.
So I'm forewarning you. Okay. Forewarning you. So it's well, in that particular video is the one who is actually having this conversation with former President Trump is his name is Imam Bilal Zuhairi. Right. So he's a Yemeni imam, I believe in Florida. I've met him before, but he actually spoke recently at a Trump rally, right? Where he said, and this is actually after that particular meeting, right? And the thing that's really interesting about this meeting is that contrary to what a lot of Muslims would say about him and about those who are supporting Trump, that he actually is bringing some conditions. He's basically saying, yes, we will support you but these are our demands, right? And he's saying that boldly and publicly. He said, this is what we want to happen, right? And apparently Trump, was really impressed with that, and then say, hey, I have to have you speak at this this rally we have. Come out, and then a bunch of the imams come out on stage.
Yeah, very articulate. I get very clearly a public speaker. And no fall, but he is endorsing Trump. He's saying, we endorse you, vote for this guy, which is shocking, actually, to me. I've never heard a Muslim endorsing Trump before. But
I mean, it's really, like I said, it's fascinating to watch. And it's also the same case with a lot of Muslims there in Michigan, Hamtramck, Michigan. The mayor of Hamtramck is coming out and endorsed Trump. Really? Publicly, and a lot of Muslims are, in Michigan. I actually believe that is actually throughout the country. A lot of Muslims are planning to vote for Trump this time around. A lot of Muslims are voting Green parties. Many of them are voting Trump. People would typically vote Democrat, and actually, many of them would probably be their very first time around voting Trump. Right. But again, can we believe him? Is coming back to that question.
Yeah, that's my question.
I personally think that, while on one hand, Trump is a politician, he's also not a politician, right? And rather, Trump's appeal to his base has been that he has not been a politician, in the sense that, like traditionally, politicians, those who hold public office, when they come out and they give speeches, it's all pretty much written out for them. People are reading from teleprompters. They're prepared speeches. Speech writers given to them. And also when they're in office, they typically are not on Twitter. They're not tweeting, so like once they become in office, their activities are really controlled by the state. Right. But Trump was different. He didn't allow for them to shut down his Twitter account. Of course, until after January 11th, after in 2021, after 2020, whenever it happened, when he lost, right? 2020 when he lost. Whatever the year was, I think it's 21, right? But basically, Trump has been much more of a normal guy, right? In a lot of ways, right? So he's kind of like sort of sporting all of his foibles out publicly, right? Not really sort of trying to hide them, and of course also somewhat brash language. He's he kind of comes off as like a down to earth, like regular guy, like construction worker type, even though he's a billionaire, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I saw him working McDonald's. I saw him preparing those fries. I saw him handing out hamburgers to drive by. Yeah, it's like it's a politician kissing babies or making hamburgers. It's
he's a salesman. So, and on top of that, but it's like any politician, he's a salesman, but he's a better salesman, right? He's a better salesman, right, than they are, right? And he's been a salesman his entire life, right? True. And he prides himself on being a deal maker, right? He's probably going to be a deal maker, right? So it's interesting. I think that the best way to judge Trump is to look at his first term. Right. So yes, he begun his particular political foray into the presidency. Well, that was actually a second. Actually, some years ago, he actually ran, before, but he won this time around. But so he won, and so early on, of course, he had some very harsh things to say about Muslims, about Islam. He went as far as saying something as crazy as, we need to kill the family members of the terrorists as well. Right. So he was saying a lot of just really wild things. Right. And so there's a video I'll share with you. I can't remember the name of the website. There's a YouTube page. And these are some guys. I typically send it to people when they ask me about Trump and trying to understand how he operates, let me see. It's called Charisma on Command, right? There's a video called Why Trump Will Smash Hillary. And these are guys who actually, they predicted a Trump victory like maybe 6 to 7 months in advance, right? So they were just observing like his debate style and among other things, right? But they made the point in that video, these are non-Muslims. They make the point in this video is that you said, okay, Trump is making all of these very wild statements, right? At the very beginning of his campaign, because right now during the campaign, he's competing against all these other Republicans, right? And in some way he has to stand out, right? and you notice, like, so once he conquers everybody and he wins the nomination, all of a sudden he tones down his language, right? So they are saying, okay, well, while he's in campaign mode, yeah, he says a lot of wild things, so that he can win, right? But once he won, you didn't hear any more talk about, okay, killing the families of terrorists, or saying Islam hates us, and they also make the point, and one other point they make is that, like, remember too that this was the Republican primary, and Trump knows that there are no Muslims there to vote for him, so he's not gonna alienate a voter base. So he knows that they're not gonna vote for him anyway. So he's willing to do that.
No, I remember when he was elected. I remember the anticipation and the shock when he got elected as well. Many people thought, and I thought, the world was going to end. We have a complete lunatic now in the White House who's basically going to invade countries, conduct a nuclear attack on God knows who. It was a real sense that this was a warmonger who would be catastrophic for the world, and that's not what happened at all. Actually, right. I mean, the way he handled the North Korea leader and so on was. You've got making deals. I mean, he was making deals with this North Korean leader. It may not have ultimately been successful. Boy, did he try. And it was very evident he was really trying hard to strike a deal in the way that no one had done before. So he actually said, at least in terms of foreign policy anyway, turned out to be actually quite surprising.
Like when during Obama's presidency, Obama's presidency, there was always a constant back and forth and a lot of hostility between the United States and North Korea, right?
Yeah, and Obama says his biggest mistake of his presidency was the assassination of Gaddafi in Libya. So he was involved in hardcore invasions, assassinations, killings. And so this is Obama, and as far as I'm aware, that's not what Trump did. I could be wrong, but I did get the impression he was involved certainly to that extent.
I think there's no doubt that he killed some people. I mean, of course, he killed Soleimani. I mean, and he probably killed some innocent people as well, but nowhere near what we had seen before that. And in all indications are that he was an anti-interventionist president, right? And he's still his base is anti-interventionist. That's been what he's been preaching. He continues to preach the same thing, and during his presidency, largely he proved to be like an anti-interventionist president, because, for instance, like we coming back to North Korea, like I wanted to make was that Obama, he had a very contentious relationship with Kim Jong-un and his father, right, before him, but then Trump becomes president, and at the beginning, there was a little bit of that as well. He called him Rocket Man and things like that. He need to shut his mouth. So he also had these names for everybody. He's really funny. He's really nice. He's really comedic, right? He makes you laugh, right? Like a natural entertainer, a natural comedian. But then all of a sudden, it just stopped. There was no more fiery rhetoric. He stopped Kim Jong-un. He stopped threatening to shoot a rocket and blow up America. All throughout Trump's presidency. Then he tried to negotiate with Putin. Right, exactly. He in Syria. He ordered that all the troops in Syria be pulled out. Right now, but the U.S. military lied to him and actually told him that, okay, there are no more troops there, but there actually were troops still there in Syria. But he actually ordered the withdrawal of all the U.S. troops, right? And the media ramped up and actually tried to make it seem as if Turkey had invaded and killed the Kurds there. And they said, and this is the result of Donald Trump pulling troops out of Syria, right? So otherwise, they were trying to force him back into Syria, right? So he pulled the troops out. He was the one who made the deal with the Taliban as well, right? Right. He made the deal with the Taliban. So in other words, by all intents and purposes, by all sort of like, any sort of like criteria you utilize, he seemed to be trying to scale down empire, right? But
we got to say we can't miss so central to everything is Palestine. I mean, he actually moved the embassy, did he not, from up to Tel Aviv, I think it was, to Jerusalem. They're very symbolic move. And this was hugely welcomed by the Zionists and in despair to the Palestinians. I mean, he didn't have to do that, and he chose to do that, playing to his constituency. back home, I suppose, and that doesn't bode well, does it? For what do you think?
I guess it does. It doesn't bode well for certain people, but for others, I mean, in other words, Trump is not a Muslim, right? And I don't expect Trump or any other politician who's not a Muslim to share my moral convictions, right?
Why not?
I feel, in other words, I feel that if they don't, let me give me a chance. That I don't expect him to share my moral conviction, but I do hope to have an opportunity to explain them to him. Right. The policy that Muslims have taken, unfortunately, has been no conversation with Trump. Right. Trump, he doesn't like us. He called us names. Yeah. He said negative things. We can't negotiate with Trump. Right. And I just think that that's a big mistake. Right. So where again, this comes back to, again, this whole idea of democracy, and how legitimate democracy is that, like, America is a republic. Right. And we have what we call representative government. Right. And the politicians have lobbies who support their campaigns and support their presidencies, right? And deals are made with these people, right? And because of that, you have to expect that those lobbies are going to get something from their particular people who are supposedly represent them, right? Now, prior to Trump, Obama, Bush, and Clinton, all three of them are on record as saying that Jerusalem is the undivided capital of the Jewish state, right? That all of them said, so everyone's already said that Jerusalem is the undivided capital. The only different thing that Trump did was he actually moved the embassy to Jerusalem, but he was still keeping with official U.S. policy. His presidents had already, so he didn't do like what they did. He did something what none of them had done, but all of them professed that they had plans to do, right, in one way or another, right? So yeah, that doing that, again, try to put ourselves in the shoes of someone like Trump, who prides himself on being a deal maker. Such a move, I would imagine that he would consider such a move to be a move further towards peace, right? Because I would say that the thing that fundamentally complicates what's happening, like with the Palestinians, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them relief, and grant them support and grant them justice, is that we live in a particular time now, which is much different than the pre-modern period, in that in the old days, as we know, when someone wanted to take land from someone else, they just did it, right? Or they had a war, and whoever won, they keep the spoils. And then all of a sudden, we had this thing called international law developed, right? And there became a commitment to a presumption of peace rather than a presumption of war. And countries were not allowed to just simply invade and take other people's land, right? But the international order, quote unquote, they made an exception for the Israelis, right? So they say, okay, well, with the exception of Israel, we'll let them continue to abide by the old rules, right? And so in other words, without saying it publicly, this is what I believe is happening behind closed doors, is that without saying it publicly, they basically say, the Israelis, technically they've won, right? We'll continue to say things and sort of drag the process out, right? But there's never really going to be a two-state solution, right? There's only going to be a one-state solution, right? That's the only thing that can work.
It's always lip service.
Right, yeah. So again, it all comes back to, like, okay, what again, is like pragmatism, political pragmatism, and I think that he was doing what he considered to be politically pragmatic, right? To get the credit for actually creating a path to peace through his particular.
I do balk a bit at the word peace there, because East Jerusalem is illegally occupied by Zionists. This is not my personal opinion. This is international law, as stated by the United Nations, and virtually everyone, apart from Israel, is illegally occupying Palestinian Jerusalem. And I don't see how that means peace for Trump then to kind of reinforce the Zionist narrative that the whole of Jerusalem is to be controlled by the Zionists, which is what has happened, of course. The occupation is, in effect, legitimate because America has given it this kind of blessing by moving the. So I don't see that as, it's not from a Palestinian point of view or from a legal point of view or UN point of view. It's not a peaceful move. It's it's an occupation, an illegal occupation being reinforced by military. Yeah.
I think is a peaceful move if people are not dying in the process of it, right? In other words, again, and I'm not trying to justify it at all, but I'm just making the point that when you understand the human psychology, right? And so, for instance, I like to mention this example, with people like, the United States, we had slavery. Abraham Lincoln, he freed the slaves, right? And there was a civil war. And then all of a sudden, blacks were eventually said, considered to be citizens, and they had equal rights with whites. Now, but the people who used to be their slave owners, they didn't take too well to that, right? And they fought at every chance they could to re-enslave the black population, or at least to slow down the progress of blacks all throughout the 20th century, right? Black codes, Jim Crow laws, redlining, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of things they were doing, right, in order to impede the progress of blacks, because, and I believe the reason they were doing that was because they were fearful. They were anxious that, okay, if these people actually ever receive the same level of power that we once had over them, they're going to do to us what we did to them, right? And so for me, I always imagined that, okay, well, that the two-state solution is never going to happen simply just based upon the psychological sort of reaction, like on Israeli, because it's like it's like Palestinians going to have a state right beside ours with their own military, their own police force, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't believe that they were ever going to accept
it.
Right?
I agree, even though it's entirely lip service. So what can we expect of Trump? So just briefly change the subject, if I may, to about Ukraine. So the current regime in America and its NATO allies, wants to ratchet up the war and push Russia out, as if somehow Ukraine can win a war against Russia, which is goodness knows how many times bigger than Ukraine. So Trump is making different kinds of noises, isn't he, about this? Well, what's Trump saying about Ukraine and Russia?
Well, I mean, he's been saying the same thing, since his loss, right? Which is that, since the war started or the invasion started, that, had he been president, then it would have never happened. Because, of course, his particular position and his approach to Putin, among other things, but he always says at the same time that when people ask him, okay, well, what would you do different? And he would say, I'm not going to tell you that, because you want to remain in a good negotiating place. You don't want to sort of play your hand before you even get the opportunity.
Ever the businessman, isn't he?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, and I do think that there's something to say about that his approach has been effective in a lot of different ways, in many different interactions and any encounters economically, among other things, So, but I do think I think here's an important thing to consider, which is, who is Trump really fighting against, right? Okay. Who are his big enemies, right? And it seems to me that, like, Trump is fighting globalists. Right. In other words, the big bankers, individuals who actually want to create a new world order, one world order, largely enslave the world. And so this is why when Trump says he's a nationalist, when he has said it in the past, he didn't mean he's a racist, he's a white supremacist, he's a white, white. He's talking about, yes, I'm a nationalist, when you sort of counterpose that with globalism, right? These globalists actually want a world with no borders. They want to remove sort of the sovereignty of individual countries, et cetera. And so that's why you have the motto of the slogan of "Make America Great Again" or "America First," right? And I remember when I used to have Netflix, I canceled my Netflix subscription a few years ago, but when I used to have it, there was actually a Norwegian series called Occupied. And I think it's really a really nice series to watch. I mean, there's some indecent stuff in it from some of the episodes, but it's a really, really captivating series. In that the story is that Norway develops this special type of energy, right? This new sort of clean energy, right? A power plant. They activate it, they turn it on, and then they stop using fossil fuels. And so they become energy independent. Now, Russia was dominant, right, when it comes to the fossil fuels industry. But the Russians, they didn't take well to that. They said, no, you're not gonna come off of our dependency. You're going to remain dependent upon us. So they invade Norway. Russia does, right? And so they occupy Norway, and they turn off this factory. And so now the sort of the oil and the petroleum natural gas is coming back into Norway. So the Norwegians, after the Norwegian president, he actually is kidnapped and eventually released. He appeals to the Americans, but the Americans in this particular series, they actually, they say, well, there's nothing we can do. We're no longer an empire, we're a republic, right? Mm-hmm. So in other words, the Americans then have turned their focus back within their own borders, right? And so for me, my suspicion is that Trump actually realizes that the empire is over, right? Mm-hmm. And Trump, it would rather have a strong republic rather than a crumbling, weak empire, right? And I think that sort of explains certain moves that he was attempting to make during the first term, with trying to scale down, right, scale back, like all the troops in Syria, trying to bring troops home from Afghanistan, among other things that he had been trying, but his efforts have been thwarted in a lot of different directions because he called the globalists. They have control of U.S. politicians, many of the politicians. And so he's fighting against all of that, right? And so when he's very abrasive, especially towards the media, that one needs to understand that the media is all against him. The media is all part of the establishment, right? You think about, for instance, Kamala Harris has been endorsed by Dick Cheney and his daughter, Liz Cheney, right? Satan and the daughter of Satan, they endorsed Kamala Harris, which should tell you a lot about exactly, what they really desire.
It was surprising, I must say, when I heard that. I think, good grief, surely some mistake here. They must have got the wrong person.
Right. Yeah. So you have that particular sort of dynamic going on, and so for me, when I'm looking at Trump, I'm okay. I understand what Trump's fighting against, right? Like Muslims. When Muslims actually are, spoken about, like in Republican circles, they again, I've been following, conservative media for a number of years now, that when Muslims are brought up in Republican circles, at least in, maybe towards the start of Biden's administration or during the Trump years, it was usually in the context of the Muslims being used as proxies for the Democrats. Right. So it wasn't like, the hatred of Muslims, it was directed towards Muslims, not because they were Muslim, but because the Democrats were utilizing Muslims as proxies to undermine the Republicans. Right. Right. So but their real enemies were the lefties, those in the Democrat Party. Right. Yeah. So but now if you look at conservative media, they're really celebrating, of course, like when you have Hamtramck, Michigan, when they actually stood up against the effort to try to force them to raise the pride flag. Like, so this is the same mayor and the council, because Muslims actually have control in that particular city in Michigan. So and then also in Virginia, there was a Muslim families coming out against, the intent to indoctrinate their children. So the conservatives like, look, this is wonderful. This is great. Conservatives can learn something from this, right? Yeah. So, but again, if we continue to be Trump deranged, right? And again, I'm not saying that that you have to or you should vote for Trump, or that it's the probably the perfect sort of option for Muslims, right? But I'm just saying that Muslims, and as I wrote about back in 2020 in a piece called "A New Political Vision for Muslim America," I was making a lot of these same arguments back then about how we need to really sort of like vote our principles, vote our interests, and we have to sort of avoid emotional sort of like reaction, right, to things, And so in other words, if they say to me, okay, Trump doesn't like black people, or they say to you, Trump doesn't like Muslims, I would say that, listen, who cares if Trump likes black people and likes Muslims? What matters is if whether or not Trump will do what I need him to do, right? Like if I say, hey, well, President Trump, these are our demands, right? If you want our vote, this is what we need you to do. If Trump is willing to follow through with those things, right, then I can care less of how he feels about me. I really don't care, because as long as I'm able to preserve my interests, right, then okay, then I should support that individual or come up with some other alternative to that, right? So
Okay,
I just think.
Okay, can I just ask you about going back to Palestine again? So it seems like at the moment, no disrespect, but hey, Biden's a lame duck president. I mean, I don't know what he's doing during the day, but doesn't seem to be doing very much. Netanyahu seems to be running rings around him. Netanyahu just does what the hell he likes, regardless of whatever the State Department says. There's a whole list of outrageous things the Zionists are doing, and doesn't matter what America says, even though America pays for everything, gives them economic, diplomatic cover. They've basically got their back completely, and they still stick their fingers up at the American administration. So that's very weird. But anyway, I can't imagine Trump doing. So what is, if Trump were elected next week? Not that he would take office, perhaps January, I think, or something. That be actually.
Yeah, it'll be January 6th.
Yeah, it actually becomes the president. But what will he do? I mean, at the moment we've got the Zionists just committing genocide, the most appalling war crimes. We can all see it. It's just disgusting. It's beyond words. What will Trump do? What would he have done the last couple of weeks with Netanyahu sticking his fingers up in America? How would he have behaved? Would he behave differently? Would he have agreed with Netanyahu and said, "Good on you, do it even more"? Or what? I mean, I don't know the answer to this question, but what do you think?
We can only speculate about exactly what he would have done, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that one can argue that he was not harmful to Muslims overall, right, during his first term, right? That there's no reason for us to expect that he would do all the terrible things that people claimed that he was going to do to Muslims, which he never did do. And then also, I would say that he's saying something that the Democrats are not saying, which is that, listen, vote for me, and then I'll bring peace. They're going to get rid of all these wars, stop all these wars, right? No, they're not saying that they're going to stop wars. They're basically just saying, oh, we'll do something about it once we're in office. Just vote for us. Once we're in office, we'll do something about it. We'll stop it, stop the massacre, right? Now I personally believe that Trump is a wild card, but at the same time, I also believe that he will be in a better position to actually act independently than Harris would be. Because Harris, for instance, if she were to win, this would be a first term, right? So as a first term president, she would need to also campaign for a second term, right? So in other words, he would be walking on eggshells. Trump, this would be his second term.
And his last.
Right, exactly. And his last. He cannot be reelected, right? And I believe that in itself, even perhaps, I would think that even makes the Israelis nervous, right? Like what actually will Trump do, right? And perhaps, I mean, again, I don't know who's been trying to kill him, but, I'm just like, hey, well, there's something.
A lot of suspects out there.
Yeah. So it's like, well, he's more of a wild card. Now, I do believe that he would do something to continue to show support to the Israelis, and so his particular foreign policy approach has been, and on the first term was been, to build up the army, make scary weapons, and support our allies, right? Financially and militarily, right? Without committing any American troops. Right. Yeah. But at least not openly, not publicly. Right. Not committing any American troops. Why? Because the Americans can't stomach war anymore. Right. Right. That we can't stomach it. We don't have the fighting spirit anymore. As a matter of fact, everything's pretty much been, demoralized with the introduction of all these, transgender, soldiers and all. It's all these crazy things that's happened in America. America's been weakened in a lot of different ways, and so we don't have that fighting spirit. Right. That I mean, even regardless of how you feel about them, I mean, Hezbollah, Hamas or the Iranians, I think that there's still a fighting spirit still there. Right. So that's why I believe that a ground invasion would never be successful, because I don't think that Americans and other Western peoples actually can stomach the loss of life of their soldiers, right? So, but so the most that'll continue to happen, I believe, will be like just a lot of bombardment, a lot of bombing, and shooting missiles and those type of things, but never like a ground invasion unless something changes in the culture, right? But again, I believe that he would have a bit more independence because of it being the second term, and also because he'd been proven to be a maverick. And so, like, sometimes Muslims are complaining about, okay, well, all of these candidates, they're puppets of APEC and of the Zionists, right? Or like this one woman who gave Trump $100 million. She's a well-known Zionist woman, and wow. I say, okay, no problem. Okay, yeah, that's a good point that you can make. But I also say at the same time, okay, well, there's a saying, that goes, okay, well, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? In other words, the game is money, right? In other words, did Muslims get Trump $100 million? Would Muslims give Trump $100 million, right? So in order for Trump to listen to them, to do exactly what they want them to do, right? So we can complain about it, or we can become assertive and pragmatic and just say, hey, well, this is the way this particular system is with all this corruption, right? It's the way this system is. And we got to figure out a way to work the system. The Jews, they figured out the way to work the system, right? They work both sides, the Democrats and the Republican. They fund both sides, right?
Yeah.
But Muslims on large, writ large, unfortunately, Muslims, okay, well, it has to be this party, or it has to be that party, it has to be that party, or it has to be only the Democrat Party, or if not the Democrat Party, it has to be the Green Party, right? Now, if you're not voting for the Green Party, then you're not a good Muslim. If you're not voting for a Democrat Party, you're not a good Muslim. If you're voting for Trump, you're not a good Muslim, right? It's just people, I just feel like we're not politically savvy enough to actually help ourselves, right? To be totally honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, gosh, so much there. I mean, I get the sense that you keep on using the expression, he's a wild card, but there's an element of uncertainty about how he will behave. And you say that in part that's deliberate because he doesn't want to disclose his hand,
right?
To continue the metaphor. But
also I would say, but also I would say that he has to win first. You understand? And so right now he can't win without APEC. Kamala Harris cannot win without APEC right now. So it's at least that's the impression and the understanding that most of those politicians have, is that I have to appease the big lobbies in order for me to win, and so I have to say things like, for instance, here's an example of this. There are these Republicans who came up with this particular policy proposal called Project 25. And in that particular policy list of policy proposals, they actually want to sort of enforce a universal abortion ban across all of America.
Oh, right.
So Trump came out and said, no, this is stupid, right? He said, listen, if we do this or if we advocate for this, like, we're going to lose. And so he made a lot of Christians, Catholics, really, really upset, right? Evangelicals, because they said, oh, he's not a real Christian, right? He's actually, okay with abortion happening, right? But he was like, he was willing to actually push back against his base and say, listen, if we were actually embrace that particular policy, we're going to lose, because even people who actually are, willing to vote for us, if they see us going that radical, right, they're not going to support us. They're not going to support us. So, in other words, so he has a type of courage that a politician, a normal politician, doesn't generally have, right? Mm-hmm. So basically, what I'm saying is that, in summary, is that in order for you to actually do anything that you actually have plans to do, you have to first win, right? Yeah. You have to first win, and so he's going to definitely appeal to his base. Those people he believe they're actually going to vote for him, and those who he doesn't believe are going to vote for him, he's not going to be really like. He's not really could cater, but so much to them, because it's like, well, how many, what are the numbers? The comparison, by comparison, a few million as opposed to like a few thousand. They say, well, I'm gonna appease the few million, and especially if they're giving me money, and the other people are not giving me anything at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, my last question to you is, and it's just a cheeky question, but I want you to tell us who will win the election next Tuesday. Who's going to win? What's your prediction?
I think it's clearly going to be Trump. I mean, Trump. Really? I think
A
that
very confident prediction. Why do you think? Why are you so confident?
well, Trump, this time around, I believe is going to not only win the Electoral College, he's going to win a popular vote.
Really?
Now, the reason I feel that way are there are a number of reasons. One, because right now, all the battleground states, for the most part, all the battleground states, he's winning, right? Yeah. You know, he's already in terms of the polls, but then also the early vote tally, because there's early voting has already begun, like in a number of states in the United States. People have passed their ballots. I think it's like 40 million people have already voted, right? You know, in this year's election. And Trump is in the lead in pretty much every place which is there. So
I didn't know that.
Right. So this is atypical in that it's usually the Democrats who actually are leading in early voting, like early ballots, right? You know, so the Democrats usually have like what we call a firewall, right, leading up to the November 5th, right, because they have this lead. But this time around, it's the Republicans who are building up a firewall because Trump encouraged the Republicans to vote early. Republicans usually come out en masse on election day, right? But this time around, like, so it has the slogan. He said that we want to make it too big to rig. We'll make it too big to rig, you know. So like get out early and then show up on election day as well. Trump's his popularity has increased among not only, I mean, of course, Kamala has an edge with women, but still his popularity has increased among women, among minorities, like blacks, like Latinos, Hispanics, with Chinese and Japanese citizens. I mean, you have a lot like of popularity. His increase in popularity, right? It's really gone. It's gone viral, right? You know that people are waking up and realizing that all the lies that have been told about him over the years. You know, people have less and less trust in the media. As a matter of fact, like recently, the USA Today, the Washington Post, and some other media outlets, which typically endorse a presidential candidate, they've come out and declared that they're not going to endorse anyone this year. Right?
Indeed. What do you read into that? Why are these papers now not endorsing anyone at all?
Because I think they see the writing on the wall. They see that Trump is going to win. And I think what they're doing is they're trying to save face for after the elections because they want to save some credibility. As a matter of fact, Jeff Bezos actually wrote an article, an opinion piece, basically explaining that, like, no, people don't trust the media anymore. We have to do everything we can to restore credibility, right? You know, because people see it. We shouldn't be in the business of endorsing presidential candidates. We're supposed to just simply be reporting the news, right? Yeah. So I think that they see the writing on the wall that there's going to be a landslide victory for Trump. And I see that there are only two ways that Trump could lose. One is that they actually do assassinate him, right, as they've attempted already. You know, so and I think that that's what this big push right now is for. In other words, they call him Hitler, and they're talking about his Madison Square Garden conference or his big convention was like similar to a Nazi party convention back in 1939. You know, and they keep calling him Hitler and all this other thing. In other words, they're trying to incite some nutcase to try to kill him again, right? I think that's fundamentally what that's all about, right? So either they get him that way, or if the Democrats win Congress, they actually win a majority in Congress in both the House and the Senate.
The elections are not just for the president next Tuesday; they are for the Congress as well. It's a very important point. Yeah.
Right. And so what they can do is that, okay, come January 6th, they'll say, oh, Trump is not qualified to hold the office of the president because he's guilty of insurrection. Right. You know, so the Democrats could, and actually they've spoken publicly about this, right? About this being a plan that they could use and they could try to keep him out of the White House, you know. You know, so for me, again, like, I don't see Trump is not a traditional Republican like candidate. He used to be a Democrat. He was against the Iraq War. He's called it a stupid war. And that war, of course, the Cheneys and the Bushes, they killed over 1 million Iraqis and all the other damage that they caused, right? That's what the Harris party represents, right?
Yes.
So Trump was against that, right? But this was before he was running for office. He was against it. He came out publicly speaking very strongly against like dumb decisions by American politicians, right? Yeah. And so So Trump, I mean, they've attempted to kill the man. They've tried to bankrupt the man. They've tried to put him in prison, right? And to me, that tells me that he's a real threat to the establishment, right? And I do think that that's good reason to put some degree of trust in what he promises, right? And he also, again, you can look at his history. You know, he's actually, much of what you hear from Trump today is what he's always been saying, even back before he got into politics, right?
Right.
So basically, like, if he says to Muslims that, okay, that if you vote for me, I'm going to work on bringing peace, right? I do think that there's good reason to believe that he's serious about that, right? And he'll do whatever he can, as much as he can, to try to make that happen. But, you know, if we're wrong, okay, no problem. I mean, what's the problem with, you know, giving someone a chance?
Before, you mentioned Obama, new hope, new beginning, and yet he ended up invading Muslim countries, overthrowing rulers, and killing an awful lot of people, but more people than anyone else. So,
yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So that's what happens when you speculate. We're all speculating about you know, what's going to happen and what could happen, what would have happened, right? And I think that especially Muslims have to come to just acknowledge that, okay, you're speculating. Okay, I'm not a bad Muslim because I don't vote for your particular candidate. I don't support your party. You know, I have a rationale. I have reasons for it. You know, none of them are perfect, right? None of the options are perfect. But again, the lesser of two evils, right? Yeah, you know, so, and you can only talk about something being good. Coming back to the original post, you can only talk about something being good, or what makes it easy for you to claim that this party or that party is the good party is because you're laser focused on a single issue, right? You say, well, yeah, okay, yeah. If you're talking about that issue, yeah, I like what they say better than what the other people are saying. Okay, no problem. But realistically, at the end of the day, what do I want for the Palestinians? I want the Palestinians to stop being killed now, right? And the fact that party is never going to it's not going to win. Even though I like what they say, it's not going to mean anything at the end of the day. The only people who have the opportunity to actually make it in are those who are likely to win, right? Which are either Harris or Trump, right? So Trump has come out and says he's against war. They didn't say they're against war. You know, they just said that, okay, once you voters in the office, we're going to stop the bloodshed, you know, but they can stop it right now. Right. So those are, I mean, there's just some of the things that we just need to have, like a proper sort of like summit or sort of like convention where Muslims actually dispassionately, I mean, you know, not say completely dispassionately, you know, but we have to sit down and really like offer or give opportunity for different perspectives actually to be expressed and to germinate and to go around the room and give people time to think about them, right? You know, so that's why I say I appreciate that you give me the opportunity to even say these things and somewhat even advocate for voting for Trump. Because I actually am saying that I'm advocating for.
Oh, you are. You're coming out now as an advocate for voting for Trump. God,
yeah, I mean, it's been known. It's been known in the community for a long time that I've had a soft spot for Trump. Right. You know, and so it's no secret, right, that, you know, but at the same time, I've also tried to explain why. Right. But people have treated me as if like, OK, well, this is something anathema, that this is something like heretical, right? Even consider how
the argument seems to be the options are awful, but Trump is the lesser of the two evils. The Democrats are the party of war, which obviously they are. Yes, right. The party of genocide, obviously they are. The party of possibly World War III, if they want to push ahead in Ukraine, which is obviously the case. But then the argument seems to be Trump is a wild card. Maybe he says he's for peace. Maybe he'll do something good. We're not sure. We can't be certain what's going to happen. But better that than the tried and tested genocidal path. I can see the logic to that, but he is such a wild card, and he has said some such dreadful things in the past. That is one hell of a bet, isn't it? It's one hell of a gamble, if I can use that in a metaphor, that you're advocating. And I don't have a view. I say I'm not American.
And I don't think it is. It is.
But if it affects the rest of the planet, which it will, we all have a stake, even though we're not allowed to participate in these guys in the White House who will affect our lives and the lives of countless Muslims around the world who are usually the victims of American foreign policy. Exactly. So we want someone who's going to stop attacking us, stop invading Muslim countries, get out of Muslim countries, and give us some justice, allow us to rule our own lives as we see fit. America is not good at allowing us, Muslim world, to do that, to put it mildly. So you're saying that Trump may be slightly better or a bit better in facilitating that for his own nationalistic reasons, not because he loves Muslims, because he's a nationalist and he doesn't want to be a warmonger.
Right.
I can see the case.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. And I think that's a better option than what we have currently, and what we have had, and what we have supported even in the past, because we've always overlooked the other issues. It's like, okay, well, it seems like these people, they like us, or it seems like these people actually might have a soft spot for the Palestinians, and it's understandable why people will go that direction. But I just think that as leaders, that you can't allow yourself to be manipulated by sort of like, just these nice words. You have to look at records. You have to look at the larger policy issues that involve. Like, look, for instance, like when we talk about the Green Party, it's okay. Muslims, we started off this particular election cycle, abandon Biden, but then Biden was removed. And then you saw like a lot of Muslims who were talking about abandoning Biden were like, yeah, vote Kamala. It's like, well, hold up, wait a minute. She's part of the same regime. Right? She's the vice president right now.
Involved in all this.
Right. So they shift to that. Okay, Biden's out. Okay, here, but then it's okay, no Kamala either. Let's do Green Party. Why? Because Jill Stein, she chose a Muslim VP. Okay, well, why not Cornel West? Cornel West also chose a Muslim VP.
You also said in this. You also said in this article of yours on Facebook, which you published yesterday, about the Green Party, as a quote. The truth is that the Green Party is largely another version of the woke Democrat alliance we've already seen over the past 2 election cycles. They want more government control, more taxation, more socialism, are anti-family and pro-LGBT, and there's a whole bunch of other letters we're not going to read out. They support doctor-assisted suicide and want to oppose LGBT unto religious institutions, to name a few things. So you're saying that the Green Party, okay, pro-Palestine and pro-Palestine, great, but there's a whole other bunch of baggage that comes with that, and we need to wake up to these realities. So no perfect options, you say, but I can see. I just want to say to viewers who may be upset with Dr. Abdullah Ali's views, fine. Please leave your comments, respectful comments, in the comments below, because there's clearly an intelligent analysis operating here, and that needs to be taken seriously on that level, rather than simply saying Trump is at X, which he may or may not be. I don't know, because this is good. This is good to talk about this. And as I say, the only reason we're interested as non-Americans is because your country has the current misfortune of ruling the world, basically, and so it matters to all of us. Otherwise, if you were in Liechtenstein or Andorra, we wouldn't bother. We just would ignore any election going on there. Who would care? But you're not in Liechtenstein. These are tiny little statelets in Europe, of course. You are United States of America. So we have to care. And I hope to God, sir, that you are right in your intuition that Trump will be a less pro-war president, shall we say, someone who doesn't want to invade and kill and promote wars like the current regime in Washington does. I hope to God you're right, because if you're not right, God help us all.
I mean, yeah, indeed. I mean, of course, you can just make your best sort of guess, I guess you'd say. You can look at certain signs. I look at like Trump's history. Like I said, it's growing up, Trump has been like an icon, right, in the American public. From the 1980s, everyone loved him until he ran for president and won, right? And then all of a sudden he became a racist, a bigot, a misogynist. I mean, nobody called him misogynist years ago when he used to have beauty pageants. People weren't calling him misogynist back then.
Appalling things, which I'm not going to dare repeat. which lend credibility to that accusation.
Right.
But yeah.
So in other words, the point being is that those of us who lived through that, we noticed the shift, right? And so the question becomes like, well, why the shift, right? So, and anything you say about Trump with respect to corruption applies just as much, if not more, to every politician out there, right? Because like basically they have Trump is like an easy scapegoat to make themselves look as if they themselves have moral integrity. Right. Now, the politicians are all corrupt, right? Well, I'm not all of them, but, but I think that some of them actually are good people, right? Like Thomas Massey, I think he's a very good man, right? I think he's really, a very honest person and really cares about America, for instance, right? But if you talk about, Trump committed adultery. Okay, well, we've heard this about politicians for a very long time. Or Trump, he lied about something. Okay, but politicians don't lie, right? Only Trump lies, right? But basically, two things I want to say, like before. Again, I don't know how much longer we're going to be together, but fundamentally, but like about the issue of third party, I think that the idea of a third party is a very good idea, right? In the sense that you want to break the sort of like monopoly or the duopoly, right? That the two parties have over the electorate, right? And so in principle, I agree with it, right? Especially long-term plans of actually utilizing, leveraging that particular existence of that particular party to put pressure on the mainstream and then hopefully even becoming mainstream. But I think that what's key to the success of that is, one, leadership. You have to have the right type of leadership, right? And the type of leadership who we believe have both the courage and the power to alter the policy platforms of the existing parties, right? So for instance, when we talk about the Green Party, we're going through like some of these problems with the Green Party, right? Okay, we have a Muslim candidate who's a VP choice, part of the Green Party, right? But it's not critical of these things that I highlighted. If anything, when questioned about them, has actually shut people down and made them seem as if like you're stupid for even asking those questions, right? It's alienating people, right? So that in itself, to me, doesn't lend credence to the belief that such a person would actually be able to change the policy platform of the Green Party, nor has the courage to even try to do so. And then we add on top of that many of the socialists, because the Green Party is a socialist sort of communist type of party, that they have actually come out attacking him recently because they don't like his comments about China, because he accused China of actually committing a genocide against the Uyghurs. But these are communists. These people, like, they love China. They said, no, China is not guilty of any of these things. And even Jill Stein publicly actually contradicted him, right? Wow. And so in other words, we can talk about third party and the Green Party, because Muslims will say, well, it's not, it's not going to be perfect, but we got to get the 5% first, and then they can get this government funding so they can be a viable party in the future. So we should vote for them. Yeah, well, okay. If you give me a leadership that I can trust, that actually they're going to make the inroads necessary in order to transform the party to make it more, if not more Islamic, but at least more conducive to a righteous America, right? Family values, etc. Then okay, no problem. Maybe I'll jump on board with it, But also those people who are promoting the idea of the Green Party as well need to answer questions like, okay, well, why not the Libertarian Party? Why not the Independent Party? Who was led by Cornel West. Now he has a Muslim VP as well, right? A female Muslim VP. Why not them? So the decision seemed to have been very haphazard. It was like, okay, Biden's out, Kamala's in, and then they said, no, not Kamala either. No, third party. Okay, Green Party. Okay, so Jill Stein, she capitalized on Muslim discontent and said, okay, I'm going to choose this Muslim man as my running mate. but ultimately this is a party which has been around for some time now. And I doubt that they're actually going to allow for you to just wrestle away from them their platform and make it conform to your own wishes, right? So you have those kind of issues, those challenges. But again, like I said, in principle, I'm okay with it. I think that it's a beautiful thing. In principle. That was something else I wanted to say. It slipped my mind at the moment, right? But
okay. Well, if you remember it, please. Yeah. So I think we can conclude there. I think we probably upset enough people, which is fine. I often do that elsewhere at Speaker's Corner. But yeah, please, folks, share your convictions below. As I say, most of us are not Americans, so we're outsiders. We just want America to stop hurting the world, supporting. Some the most appalling atrocities around the world. We just want them to get out and stop doing it, and if possible, help to bring some justice and peace to the world. And may the candidate who's most likely to bring that about, may he or she win next week. But we may get no one who's particularly good either. Who knows? We may just get another devil in the White House. Unfortunately, I don't know the answers. Yeah, exactly. So. It may just be awful, the outcome. Unless you can recall what you're going to say.
Okay. Well, I would say the last thing, this is not exactly what I wanted to say, but I do think that Muslims have to get back to the importance of missionary activity, in the sense that we have something to offer the West. We have something to offer the world. And when we place that in front of everything else, then, things are being prioritized in the right way. And so that we're not easily, I guess you'd say, led by just pathological sort of reaction, right? Just to say, okay, well, emotionalism, and okay, well, I don't like this person for what they said about me. I don't like this person because I heard they don't like me. But rather it's like, okay, well, these people are not Muslim. They're not Muslims, and most of them don't really know what Islam is. Most of them, and if they do know something about it, then maybe they don't know enough Muslims, right? And we should be open to working with everybody, right? Both parties or any party that exists, right? But ultimately is about trying to contribute to making society better, right? Calling people to God, right? Introducing them to our messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, right? And then just generally about, making society better, right? Now, if we get back to that focus, I think that things will be a whole lot easier, right? Rather than just simply focus on a single issue, which doesn't actually contextualize like the larger concerns of our religion, right? And so that's what I would leave everyone with today, inshallah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you very much, Professor Ali, Abdullah Ali from Zaytuna College in California. The whole world waits with bated breath to see what will happen next week. But I admire your courage for standing up for views which are not necessarily very popular in certain areas, and that's characteristic of your activity on social media, is to have a robustly independent mind. And it takes guts to do that. Even when we may think you're wrong or right, it does take guts to have your own view that's not simply handed to you on a plate from the media. So in that sense, that's very very creditable, I'm sure. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll see what happens, inshallah, next week.
Thank you. Very much.
Thank you.